a Crafty Sue sew it seamstress, and I'm diving into a new part of working with the sewing machines. The cases, you know, they're a part of a lot of the sewing machines that I have, and some of them need a little bit of work. This one needed a good bit of work. The tough part is trying to keep the same design because it's hard to find, because now it's 40 plus years later, and it's going to be kind of hard to find a print that is just like the original. Now, I'm not going to disturb the lettering whatsoever. This is going to be real intense. So this particular machine, when it got to me, the case was destroyed. I mean, the bottom was just busted all to pieces. And so I've had to do some strengthening of the base because it is a heavy machine. And what I have done is I have wrapped the base in a couple different things. And I have used burlap. I have used a sealer kind of varnish to help it adhere and seal to it. The piece of burlap, I did some arts and crafts trying to get the same color scheme with the black and the green and the blue, and I put it on the bottom here, but this is going to get covered up as well. This gives some texture to the base, gives it some more strength, even though it's made out of wood, and it's made out of wood. There's a little ding here where the machine actually put a hole in the base, so putting on the extra layers of paper along with the burlap is definitely a plus for this. It's not going to be smooth on the bottom, but these old cases tend to get warped anyway, so that's how that is. Now, I initially did try to do some of my own crafty stuff, trying to get that same color scheme, the same kind of effect. The only way that I know of that I could have done that is if I'd had a rubber stamp and I took some burlap, and this is the burlap that I used because it has the texture, which would have given the whole case a type of texture, which would have been really cool. And then use that stamp with some black and green ink, or it's like a bluish color, onto the burlap, and then glue it, seal it with a varnish. And I ordered a stamp. It hasn't got here yet, but fortunately, even though I do not and could not find the exact same colorization in the original, and this was paper that was on the original one. I mean, it literally looks like wallpaper. So I started looking at wallpaper, and I found something very, very close to it. Not exactly, but very, very close. I mean, this is a bluer version, not as much black on it. There's a lot of black in the original, and it's dark, but you can see the lines in there. So it's very similar in that respect. So this, in place of it, just brightens it up some. So I'm going to retain basically the original design. Not exact, but in a restoration, you can't always restore the case just like the original, unless you can, by some weird case of the imagination, you can find the company that made this original wallpaper that went on the outside. This particular case is a very well made in the respect of the top, and you can't see now because I covered it already, but these were made with what's called a dovetail joint. A dovetail joint is cut in such a way that it cuts in kind of triangular, and then the pieces that fit to it fit into that. So it literally interlocks really well. Now, because this was damaged and was dropped, or however, whatever they did to it in shipping, it had separated on the corners. The dovetailing was not tight anymore. Whatever glue was used, carpenter's glue was used to originally glue it, had broken apart, and so I had to get some wood glue and repair it with the wood glue at first. Now, knowing that I was going to cover this outside up, and this is actually some of it that I've already done. And up close, when you look at it, you can see where it looks like it has the little fibers in there. But that's the design of that wallpaper. I used painter's tape, and on the really loose parts of the base, I actually used good old duct tape, because I knew this was going to end up getting covered up anyway, so if taking the duct tape off pulled some of the original paper off, it wasn't going to be that big of a loss. It was going to get changed anyway. So the this box part where the pedal is typically stored, in these older machines they would typically store it right in here, right next to the machine. This was totally broken out, and now it's fixed. I used a wood glue and super glue mixture to get that to stay put. But then again, when I finished wrapping the inside of that extra wallpaper coating is going to help keep that strong also. Now, whenever you have a wooden case like this and you're trying to restore it, or at least have it kind of look like the original, you want wood glue? Yes. You also want to use not wood putty, wood filler. There's a big misconception about wood putty or wood filler. Wood putty is a plastic and it never dries. And you can paint it and all that, but you can't sand it. This being a solid wood base and the top, you want to use wood filler. Now the wood filler that I purchased, it also is for exterior use, which means it has a certain level of waterproofness. Once this is completed and I seal it with a hard coat varnish matte finish, because it's not a shiny case, never was, then that will make it watertight. I mean, it won't, you don't have to worry about water damage to it. Because yes, it's covered in paper, and it was originally covered in paper, and it had a varnish on it originally. For different areas that might need sanding, you can use handy Dremel. When the corners are finished and ready to have the wallpaper added to them, then you want a lightweight sandpaper. I don't know what grit this is, I just know that it's probably about the lightest one out there, except for it's not the super fine, it's like one step up. Let me see, it's a 100 grit. I just looked at the back. 100 grit. And when the inside, and I just added another layer of the wood putty to the inside of the lid, and you can see all these areas where it's light, and you see the darker part. The darker part's the old wallpaper lining that was in here. I let at least 24 hours go by, even though it says it's ready in like 4 to 6 hours, but I let it sit for a good 24 hours, get it good and cured before I do any sanding of it. And I'm going to lightly sand it and take a soft cloth and wipe the dust off from the sanding, so that when I go to adhere the wallpaper in the inside, that it will actually stick to it, because you have to have a clean surface. You can even use a lightly damped cloth, but then just make sure you let it dry. Oh, good. Don't use a hairdryer, just let it dry naturally. These are kind of things you don't want to rush. So, with all that said, I started with the base first because it was the most broken. The sewing machine just, it couldn't sit in it the way it was. And I got the sewing machine on the back there. Got it cleaned up, and as soon as this is ready, I'm going to test it, make sure it's stitching good, and put it back in its home. This is for a customer of mine, and I said, you know, I can fix it up so it looks like a brand new case. I took on the challenge for myself, and I'm going to make this look awesome. So right now it doesn't look too bad. It's starting to look that way. The only thing that's going to be a little different is, like I said, I used the burlap on the bottom and I glued it good. That was before when I thought I could do the same design as the original print wallpaper. And I thought to myself, that's not a bad idea anyway, because now it's got more strength in the bottom and it should stay intact without any issues. So when I cover that, I'm going to cover it with the blue, the wallpaper blue. That's going to go across the bottom. When you have this kind of design, where you have one side that's mostly the cream color, whatever the main color is, then you have this accent color. I call this an accent color. You want to do the side first. You want to do the sides first because the top is a solid sheet. Okay. Now to get the old handle off, that was a trick and a half, let me tell you. It sounded like I was building another house in here. I was making a lot of racket. But if you have a small flathead screwdriver or even a wedge, I don't have any of those, so I use screwdrivers. And then you kind of slowly keep tapping it up underneath the original handle hole. Where is it? There they are. These things, which I was not aware, are basically bolted in, riveted in. I mean, there's no screw to unscrew. It's literally, they put it in and they hit it with something and bam, and that thing was supposed to meant to stay. The way I eventually got these off was I had taken a cutter tool for the Dremel on the inside of the lid, pulled off the wallpaper lining because that was covering these up, and did the Dremel on there. You get that paper off and to start getting at the metal that was holding it in place underneath. Flip it back over, go to the top, and take the hammer claw end, this end right here. I used that. I took it, put it under where the handle was, because this one came to me without a handle. And I pried it, and it eventually just popped off, and I didn't rip a hole in the lid, and I was really nervous about that. So just take your time, and if you get enough of it off from underneath, when you go to pry it on top, all you'll have is two little holes, and that's what the wood putty's for. Wood putty was used also where the dovetails had separated. Not only did I glue them, after the glue dried, and there's still a little bit of a gap, which sometimes that happens, I put the wood putty in there and I shoved it into all the gaps on all the corners to give it that ability to keep its strength, because wood putty actually has sawdust in it, so it has wood in it, and wood contracts and expands with changes in weather, and you want to have it as close to original in the sense of how it's going to react to the temperatures around, but you never want to keep it in a damp room anyway. So I did that. The handles that I found, you go online and you look up luggage handles, and this is the perfect color. It matches it perfectly, and the original handle probably was this color, or it was the darker color, and you can't find the darker color, so I went with the light. And the top is dark anyway, so you have that beautiful contrast of light on dark. So that's going to be beautiful. Then I just have to get the little screws that screw into the base, and I have to find that online. That'll be my next thing. So when you get to this part, and we're going to, as soon as I get all the little pieces, we're going to put this thing together. So you cut out a piece for your top, and you cut out the piece for the side or the bottom. The bottom and the side part you're going to do first, because this top has to meet it. In this particular design, it meets it right here. So I've already got this side on here. Now this here It's going to need to be trimmed down. I need to get an X-Acto knife to make sure it's nice and crisp and clean. When you do your side, now this paper is probably 20 inches or 21 inches wide. So the top is going to meet, the other side's different, matter of fact. The other side looks like this. The other side has more of it. They have one side that's mostly cream and the other side's mostly of the blue or green. So when you cut this piece for the side that you put on first before you top, cut the top one first, and then you know how to cut this to match it, but you're going to actually stick this part on before you actually do the tops. Top's the last piece. On the lid, top's the last piece. Then you mark the top where you want the handle to go. That calls some even measuring. But in this case, this one is going to go this way. And you see how here it's shorter? Well, that's because the top is one solid piece. It's going to come and meet that. It's going to meet it flush. And once it's sealed, you're not going to be able to really tell where the two meet. Now in the original, because these were most likely custom made, it was a custom design, I couldn't find any seams. I couldn't find a single one except for inside where the liner was. So with this, I put the top on the wallpaper, and this, the great thing about the wallpaper is it's gridded on the back. It has a grid, and you can mark it almost precisely the way you need it, and it's amazing how well it goes together. So I did the top first, as far as having it ready to be the last thing. And it's always to be prepared at a time, have the last thing that needs to go on already ready to go, so you're not having to cut it out, last minute. I don't like last minute. So I made it this way. And the top's another story. We'll cover that one when we actually go to finish it. Now, you have to pick which side you want to be the side that tucks under. Why do I want it to tuck under instead of it just meeting? Because when you tuck it under, you're giving more strength to your lid. And not only that, you're covering up some, imperfections you might have. So, when you're doing your corner, you sit your top on there. You mark it there. Okay. So I know this because I can see where the original one stopped up on here, because this is kind of almost see-through-ish. So you pull it up, and granted, this is all like one piece. So what you do is the side you decide that's going to be the crisp side, and the other one tucks under it. And I pick the ends because it's a lot easier. You have a shorter space to work with. So you put that up, and then I went on the back side and I found the grid, and I cut along that straight line, pulled it up, so that this way, this side comes up. That's the one you tuck under. The longer end you tuck under. So now, when I go to actually adhere this, it's going to be the same way, but opposite on the other side, same thing. So now, I don't know if you can all see very well, but it leaves a nice crisp corner. Let's see if I can get that to where you can actually see it, kind of see what I'm talking about. At least this side you can. You see how that stays flush? It looks like the seam from both the front and the back part of this meet each other. It doesn't really have the impression that it's tucked under, and that's what you want it to look like. You do that for all four corners, but you do the bottom part first before you do this. So when I finished making the top, I took this big piece here and I put it over it, and the thing is with this is you make them just meet. Okay? They're just going to literally just meet one another to where it looks like it's one whole sheet. And that's what we want. We want it to look like one whole sheet. These little wrinkles in here, those will work themselves out. What you want to get if you don't have what we call the pastry blender, it's a metal piece that's straight. There's also the wallpaper smoother thing. I don't know what exactly they do, but you use it to smooth real wallpaper when you're putting up wallpaper with the paste and the water and all that. If you use one of those, you work out your air bubbles as you go. These are kind of like air bubbles. And then, and we're going to do this in the next video. I just have to get the tool to do that, to show you to it easy way. And then you go to the inside. Now, because this was one big piece, right? I kept it folded out, and where that corner is, I cut along the grid line down to that corner. Okay, you cut down to that corner. So when you go to do this, you know, you fold it around the side, and you fold it down. You can fit it in there, just like that. If you feel like you need to trim it, you know, some more. And it almost goes all the way down to the bottom, which is perfect, because when you finish off the inside, you're going to get another big piece of your wallpaper. You're going to put it in there and tuck it into the corners to know where you need to make the same kind of slit so that the whole thing inside is covered up. And when you do that, you're going to come up and meet this cream color that was here, and it's going to cover up those raw edges, and it'll seal it. But then again, when you do the hard coat seal or varnish over the whole thing, that will all be nice and smooth and flat. That's the goal. So this is just an update on the newest project I'm working on, and it's for a young lady who she's getting kind of anxious, I think. So I wanted to show her the progress that I'm making so far. I need to take some photos of it, send them off. It's like, okay, this is where I'm at, and then we will tackle the handle and putting the handle back on. The handle's going to be the easy part, mainly because you just screw the bottom you screw the handle in from the bottom, and because it's constructed the way it is, it doesn't matter if the wallpaper in the inside covers those. It's going to be like rivets or screws, if my memory serves me right. But as long as it's secured and it holds, that's all that matters. The other thing is, as far as fixture parts, these guys here, they're going to need some special paint, and I'll be getting that too. But this little guy is going to be pretty gorgeous when he's done. So, restoring sewing machine cases, that's what I'm doing nowadays. At least this is the first of, I have three or four, and one of them is mine that I'm keeping for myself. The other one is going to be one to have someone adopt from me. This is for a Morse sewing machine, beautiful Morse sewing machine, turquoise in color, bluish green, and so adding the blue, more of the blue, kind of like fits the sewing machine. But you'll see that when I show you the sewing machine, when I go to put it right back in its little house. So if you've enjoyed the information as far as the tools that you need, Dremel, 100 grit sandpaper, a good hammer, and some, either you can use Mod Podge. Then Mod Podge does have a hard coat. Actually, I think it's water resistant or waterproof. You can also use ceramic coats sealant. This works really well too. The Mod Podge is a little bit thicker. This is a little easier to work with, say, like for a first coat. So more than likely I'm going to do this as a first coat and use the hard coat one afterwards, just to be double sure. And you can also use, if you do any kind of painting, there's also a matte varnish for paintings. I do painting as well, and I've used this on my paintings to seal them. Acrylic paintings where it doesn't shine. It's not a shiny finish. It's a matte varnish, and it preserves the paint. So it's going to preserve this just as well. This is a little bit thicker though. This is more like Elmer's glue. Elmer's glue thickness. So I used it actually on the base, on the bottom, with the, okay. This stuff, the burlap, yeah. I had a moment there. So, it's a self-stick wallpaper. It comes in different, well, I think they even call it linen look weave wallpaper. It looks, and it even has a little bit of texture already to it. You can play around with some of it, try doing different, dyes and things like that. When I get my stamps, I'm going to try that out because, like I said, I have another case to work with, and I just want to see if the texture stamps do anything different or something more creative that I can do on some other cases that I acquire and have got. But that wood filler, not wood putty. You're working with a wood case, wood filler, do not use wood putty. Not good. And then of course your wood glue. And there's a couple different types of wood glue. Just get the one that has the not the quickest drying time. The one that has that says strength stronger than, it'll say it on, I can't recall, but there is a Gorilla Glue version, but there's also another one that's not Gorilla Glue that's awesome, and that's what I used for this one. And I don't know if I have it out here or not. I know that it is, let me see if I have it out here to show. I don't know if I do. It has something like it. It's probably in the other spot. Anyway, that's my little pre-restoration. And of get ready to do it. Please leave comments, questions, and the next video will be more of actual hands-on. But I wanted to give you kind of like a background of what you're going to need. And if you have an old wooden case that you want to restore or just make better, that's what I'm here to help you do. So comment, share, and subscribe, and yeah, keep on selling, but definitely keep on creating.